what is your birth name?
Shwartz, Gazela, Shwartz.
And what is your married name?
Gazela Bulow.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Budapest in 1931, February the 14th.
Okay. And did you grow up in Budapest?
I was in Budapest until I was 14.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your family, about your growing up in Budapest and life before the war?
Sure. I grew up in, my grandmother lived with us. She was a strict Orthodox Jewish woman, so we had to apply to the Orthodox laws and keep kosher and do everything. When my mother married, she married my father, and he was not Orthodox. He was totally against it, and so that was a conflict between the mother-in-law and my father that I remember. Otherwise, everything was pretty normal. Went to Jewish elementary school for girls, and I had no problem with anything until it really started to happen.
And when actually, how did you experience those first signs of anti-Semitism?
Okay. Well, I knew about anti-Semitism because after the Jewish school, I went to a public school to higher education, 2 years, and there was Christians and on. But I was never felt or looked like a Jewish girl. I have long braids, light brown, and I didn't experience Jew, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then started that we should leave our apartment and go into a house with the yellow star on it. So that's what I remember. The first thing was that I'm different from other people, from the other kids in the school. And then they took my father away. Every Jewish man until 49 had to report, and I saw him once more. Should I just tell you everything like what happened, or just
Yes,
like what remembering?
Yes, and you can tell me a little bit more about. Actually, do you remember when your father was taken away? He was taken away to a labor camp.
He was taken in a labor camp, and as I said, he came once. In fact, he bought some food. We never saw him again. But I remember he said to my mother, what is very unusual at that time in Jewish families, they've been separated because of his not living as a Jew, and my mother was strictly with her mother, Orthodox. So I visited my father, and then we heard that he had to report again. We never saw him again.
Okay, and so you visited him at the labor camp?
He visited
He
us.
visited.
No, he didn't.
He visited once. Okay.
Yeah, we never knew. I just remember he said that we should be kept safe, and told my mother to. You know, by then everything went so fast, rapidly downwards. You know, that's why I'm saying it. I didn't understood. You know, it just happened like a bomb is falling, just one after the other. You know, like you are not a person. Then I remember I was 13, was a graduation school, and I picked up, the certificate that I graduated. I think that was like a third gymnasium, they called it. It's like a junior high, something like that. And then after that, I never went back to school. We were not supposed to go back to school. You know, we stayed. And then my father, his last gesture was that he bought a Swedish Schutzpass. You know.
Do you know how?
They call it Schutzpass.
Schutzpass.
Yeah, he bought it. I don't know for how much, for my mother and my brother and me. And we went into this building in the old neighborhood, and it said Swedish under the Swedish consulate. I don't remember. Very short time. By then the Nazis marched in in March, and by June everybody said we're not going to stay in the area, that they're building an area for Jews, the ghetto. So I think by October 44 we had to leave the area where I was born and raised and going to school, had friends, and we went into this area which they put a fence around practically with guards, and that was the Jewish ghetto.
Understand.
And yeah.
Do you remember anything about the safe house, that protected house that you lived for a short period?
Yes.
How many people were there? Do you remember other kids?
I don't know how many. I only know that it was all occupied. The apartments were occupied, and everybody who could afford whatever it cost, wasn't cheap, I guess. It was children and parents, and hardly any men already. The men they took before. So we felt safe. We felt, we are privileged, you know.
Mm.
But it didn't last, because by this time in 44, toward the end of the summer, the Germans started to lose the war on the Eastern Front, and then when it became very brutal. You see, Hungary was very late included in war, because our leader, his name was Shwartz, he collaborated with the Germans, so they kept us longer, so-called free. But by then we started to lose, and we drove from the Russian front. They became more and more. They just wanted everybody killed who was. So that's what I remember, you know. And of course, since then I read a million books. And
sure. And do you remember? So you don't know how your father managed to obtain those Schutz passes, or
he had or borrowed or had some people in his life before. I don't know. It was we weren't rich. But it was like 1,000, I don't know how much, 1,000 kronen, I don't even remember the money that time. But he bought for mother and my brother and me Schutz pass. And we've been very proud of that, because most of my friends, they just, wherever they went, I don't know, they haven't been in that area with the Schutz houses, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you remember where the Schutz house was?
Yeah, that was in the Nefelejc Utca, that was a 7th district in Budapest.
Mm-hmm,
We lived that before there, and they put down the Swedish sign on the doors. And that time I never heard from Raoul Wallenberg yet.
Okay. And were there people who were in charge of running the safe house, of being provided for the food?
They didn't live there, but there was I think we still could buy some food. We could go out, let's say from 10 to 12 in the morning. We couldn't go out, I remember, way before that, after 5 o'clock. We're not supposed to leave the house. But that's before the Schutz house. But I guess there were people who we could buy from. They bought for us, you know. We knew from before, from the Christian surrounding, they have been, you know, either worked for us or had heart. And as long as we had my mother had a little jewelry, so she always sold a little piece.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. Yeah.
So you stayed you were with your mother and with your brother,
and
the grandmother was.
Grandmother, that's the most tragic story. I don't even. My grandmother wore, as you know, she shaved her head and she had a wig on and a long black dress, and she was, from 1,000 miles you knew this is an Orthodox Jewish woman, and she was born in Poland. So when the German took over, they said every Jew who was not born in Hungary should come to the precinct, you know, today. So she took her little purse and went to the precinct, and we never saw her again. So what we heard is that because she would not touch non-kosher food, that was her end. So I remember that was most, and still is, I think, the most tragic picture for me. That they kept her there, and that she was so fanatic, I guess, that she would just rather die than. But that's what we heard. Who knows how she died? Never saw her. We never. had a place to go to. I know she must have been probably in her mid-60s only.
So it was your father was in labor camp, then your
My
brother, your
my
mother,
brother was with me and
yourself,
my
any,
mother.
any other family members?
There were some aunts, yeah.
Some
There were
aunts.
some aunts who've been in the house, an unmarried
Mhm,
sister of my
mhm.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
There were two aunts from another side, from the family. They lived in another apartment. So everybody was around, even in the ghetto where they took us.
Mm-hmm.
So I only feel that George and I and my mother survived because the Germans came pretty late to Budapest. That's just my theory.
Do you remember when they, in March of 1944, when they...
When they marched in,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in March 19th,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't personally right away got the effect because of the Schutz house and first the Yellow Star house, then the Schutz house, you know. But by October, I guess, that was the month when they said, I remember they said everybody takes just a blanket and some clothes and line up on the street, and it was already cool. Oh, my mother was taken away before but came back. She was taken to Theresienstadt, which was a lager very close to the city. But whatever was the circumstance, I don't know, she did come back and she marched with us into the ghetto, my brother, my mother and I, and my two or three aunts. And I remember walking like, and the non-Jewish people stood on the street, and some of them laughing, some of them just pointing. And we walked like, you know, like we just murdered people, whatever. And they marched us into this fenced place. And we've been in an apartment, I don't know how many people, 15, 20 in each apartment, and getting cold. But 45 January, that we've been liberated by the Russians. So that's why I'm saying that we had percentage-wise a shorter ordeal than, let's say, the Jews who were born in the villages or the borders. So time-wise, just had to do with time.
Do you remember how your mother managed to escape when you said that she was taken away and then she came back?
I think they let them go. I think they let, whatever reason, I don't think my mother would have the type to escape. They've been in a brick factory near Budapest, and they put down there a lot of women, also under 45. Maybe they wanted to take them out and there was no more chance. So they didn't kill them, so they said just go wherever.
Mm.
So she marched into the ghetto with another aunt.
And is the story has something to do with Wallenberg or not? The way she
Only the Schutz house, as I later learned.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who, as a Swedish gentleman, who took care of that idea, and I really still don't know what motivated him totally. I don't.
So you were mentioning the day when you were marched, when you were actually taken to the ghetto.
Yes.
When was that? It was October or?
That was around October. Started to be very cool, you know. Budapest could be very warm in the summer, very cold in the winter. And I remember, maybe age-wise, you couldn't be that dramatically serious about anything yet than when you are 16 or 18. I don't know. I was 13 and...
What do you remember from the ghetto?
Oh, horrible. We've been very hungry. We got once a day the Red Cross gave you either a little soup or there was a Red Cross stand downstairs. By then started to snow. There was November, December, very early. And they gave us a little soup and bread, and something was still left, but there was an incident. I don't know if I should mention it. As I said, I was not taken for Jewish so my aunts and mother asked me if I could go to the old neighborhood practically sneak out from the ghetto, what some people did, and took a piece from a gold chain, gave me, and get bread, and I came back with bread and something, and I did it maybe twice. And then the bomb started, the American bombed, and the British bombed, and the Russian bombed, and but twice I was out. Very few people could get out, but some children got away with it.
How did you do that? How did you manage to do that?
I felt as a hero, I guess. I sneaked through by the guard's house, the side, and I held long braids, light brown long braids, and sandals and dress. Nobody looked at me any way or form. And I just walked through maybe 35 minutes to the old house, where I knew there was a Porter family, where I was pretty friendly with the daughter, the same age. And I said, okay, I have a little gold here, and we need. And they, they could have been spied who would tell them that we do that, but they didn't. They gave me a loaf of bread or pocket full of beans, something like that, as I remember. I only did that once. Like my brother couldn't have done it because he would be taken right away for Jewish. I can't explain it. Everything was just so explicitly, the non-Jews just looked for, I'm not saying everybody, but I felt as a little hero in a way. Even though later an aunt told my mother, that was dangerous and she could have been. But I remember that very, very clearly. After that I never left, and I think they sometimes sneaked up in the apartments. We had still some gas, not electricity, gas in the oven. And I think they cooked something, of soup or something, one of my aunts, and she said, now go upstairs, they'll be ready now, and bring it down. We've been in the cellar. We slept on benches because the bombs. And I'm upstairs, and I hear the bombing, and I'm standing with a pot of bean soup in a corner, and the stairs were taken away. The stairs. So two older men from the cellar, they find a ladder and they brought me down the second floor. Things like that. When I'm talking it, I can't even imagine it today, but you can do if you're very young and maybe didn't understand the consequence,
Did you feel, anyhow, since you were with your brother and with your mother, did you feel protected in a way, staying with them?
Well, that helped in a way, of course, and a couple of aunts. Even though we slept on, I don't know how many people in a bed, I slept. I think it was like an old lawn chair which was half broken, things like that. So it's in a. You can't imagine now, but things, people can do things, but unbelievable. I think the survival instinct is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that you could die from that, or what really was behind all that, Only much later I knew what went on.
Mm-hmm. So, what else do you remember about the ghetto? What happened? Did you, when the Russians came in, were you there? Were you in the ghetto?
Sure. That was.
Well,
of course, we sat in this cellar on these rotten benches, and there was a couple of old men still alive, and so they said, "Oh, Jews, pray now, because that's going to be very soon our salvation, that the Russians coming." I don't know how they knew it, but they kept saying to. Pray, 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 and Jewish things, and we prayed and we sang and we sat and we been hungry, and then we heard all these bombs and the cannons on the roof and all that, and then January, I don't know exactly the date, mid of January, the first Russians came in, By then, some of the Germans took the uniform off and hid some places, you know. But when the Russians came in, that wasn't also such a great thing in a way, you know. I mean, very brutal. I mean, not to me personally, but I heard about a lot of raping, you know. But they had these big, big wagons with soup and bread, and they threw it down on the street that we could get it, you know. And I saw women, and I never saw women in uniform marching. And so we knew that the Nazi thing is over, you know. But I much later knew that my father will never come back. That time we didn't know. In the fact, when I lived in Germany, I visited Dachau. And I wanted to see, and was all cleaned up, of course. And went to the office and I said, I know my father died here. They find a file. There was a file. Bela Shwartz came in then and then, died then and then. I think typhus or something like that. Mm-hmm. So after that, of course, when we were so-called liberated, we went back to the old house we lived. It was all bombed out. Like half the apartment was hanging, the other was still a little bit there, and we moved in, no heating, no food, and I got pneumonia, and my mother wandered around the snowy streets to find a doctor, and I tell you, there's so many details you can't even express it all. You can't. It's when I talk now, it's all coming a little, not little, you know, all these in between things, you know. My mother went almost from house to house, apartment to apartment, practically begging for food for us, you know. And as you see, we survived.
You mentioned that you, at the time when your father wrote Schutz passes,
yes.
You didn't know about Wallenberg or...
No, I know.
When did you first hear about him? Was it after the war?
Really here in America.
In the United States. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In America, not in Germany, not in Israel. I'm sure that a lot of... Don't forget, I had those years, 14, 15, 16, 17, I was go back and forth with no stability, no family, just... I never heard that, but here I heard that many years ago already. Mm-hmm. That, you know, I always said, I think he was an aristocrat, in a way.
He's from
aristocratic family, yeah.
Very prominent.
And that he got so involved, we always questioned that, you know, the why. And I think there are unique people who can do that, you know. Has nothing to do with his kind or his people, or, you know. And then I know he was killed by the Russians in 45. We couldn't believe it. I still don't know why.
Yeah, it's still not clear whether he was killed right away or he was killed later.
They don't know. They don't know why. I mean, nobody. He probably maybe demanded some answers. So I don't know why he killed him. Or they didn't know who he was really, or...
Yeah, there are different versions. They accused him of being an American spy.
Oh.
That is one version, and then there are other versions of what might have happened.
Yeah. But that was brutal that the Russian killed him, you know, because we're supposed to be allies.
Do you, after the war, after the liberation, what happened? Did you go back to the school, or did you stay in Budapest?
No, yes, a while we stayed in Budapest, but by then the Zionist movement from Israel, from Palestine, started to collect children, try to say to them, we have to build our own country, our own land, and we need young people like you. And another thing, just by the side, that after we learned that my father is dead, he was on a list after that. A year later, and he died in Dachau. My mother met somebody who lost a wife with 3 children in Auschwitz, and she remarried, right in the DP camp. You know DP camps in Germany, by Munich. I was there 3 years with my aunts because my mother remarried, and they came to America, and my brother and I headed toward Palestine with the Zionist youth movement. So my brother went into another group. I still don't know clear why that happened, but I was in a group. They took us with the train to Marseille, and we sat 6 weeks in Marseille, and then with a fishing boat we took 12 days to get to Haifa. And I remember it was not Israel yet, so at night they told us to go into the water to the knees and go to land, and there the young Israelis waited with beautiful tables with food and white cover, and my mother came to America with her new husband.
How long did you stay in Palestine?
Well, I stayed 10 years.
10 years.
I was 10 years. Then in 40 it became Israel.
Oh, okay.
I came in just before that.
Okay.
And it was Palestine, and it was not legal yet, but the British by then started to move away.
When did you came to the States, to the United States?
Yes, in 68.
How did you adjust to the life here? Did you meet a lot of Holocaust survivors also?
Well, that's interesting things. I have still now more non-Jewish friends than Jewish friends. I don't know why. I had Jewish friends, and I still have some. My husband is not Jewish, but we don't have a religious house, one way or the other. He doesn't practice what I go to bar mitzvah or my brother stayed in Israel, and he was much longer with Israelis. I married a year and a half with a Hungarian Jewish boy and didn't work out. I was 17, needed special permit. And after the divorce, I met a man who was a Berliner Jew who was there before Hitler. And he ran a few clubs and cafes, and he was my boyfriend, so he gave me a coach and singing lessons. So very glamorous for 5 years. And then my husband came with a group of Germans to build power stations in Israel. So that's when I met him. I was about 22, 23. And he's 3 years my junior. And I'm married a long time. Have Peter.
So I know this already. It's one of the questions that we usually ask. Do you have a son, daughter? Do you talk with them about what?
Oh yeah, well, I
happens,
didn't talk to him when he was young. He was a preemie in India. There was a very complicated birth. I had a nervous breakdown. We came back to Germany, and it was always a problem the first 5-6 years. But I must say, my mother-in-law, my husband's mother, was a godsend, beautiful, big-hearted, generous, wonderful, who see where I'm at, and took over, and he really took care of Peter. Peter stayed with me, but she picked him up in the morning, did everything for him. And then more and more I thought, my mother lived here, and more I thought, I really don't want to raise Peter totally as German. And we traveled a lot. We lived in Sweden, as I said, in Denmark, and my husband even traveled more. And when his school age came, I said to Henry, I'm tired of traveling. I don't like to stay here and get old in Germany. So I convinced him to emigrate to America. And we are here 42 years.
So your son is familiar with your Holocaust.
He is now
story
very
and the
familiar.
experience.
He's very,
Mhm.
very involved. He knows that I'm here. He's St. Jonathan, and he knows he was born in India. And I keep telling him, one day maybe you should see Israel, but I always feel it's not so safe yet, but never be safer in my opinion. So, but he's totally assimilated here, I think. But he knows the history.
So, what do you think about? You already told that in a way about Raoul Wallenberg and other people that actually risked their life. Did you have you heard about other people or some stories of your friends or family of someone who actually helped them, or do you know any?
Well, I know that he saved. They say I didn't know it then. When he saved 100,000 Hungarian Jews, I can't even imagine how he did that. But I guess that he had this appearance. And I don't even know, he went to the Germans and told them I have passes and these people come with me now, and they let them. You know, I'm not totally sure about I read different things. And I'm very glad that somebody like that was around. It should have been a few thousands of them around like that, but it wasn't. I think most people enjoyed that Jews are punished, whatever the reason, you know. Look, if you live in a country where a lot of poor people, a lot of problems, and you're a minority and you happen to do pretty well, you'll never be liked. And that's history. It's never. It's just human nature, you know. They can do well, but you're not supposed to, because you're not really one of us. That's my theory, but... And Wallenberg, not being Jewish, you know, and coming from another part of the Europe, you know, it was amazing that he had the heart and the nerve and the energy and the strength to, you know, he was probably in danger all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to ask you also if you have any documents or photos from that period.
Yes, I have some.
But not the Schutzpasses or any...
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what happened to the Schutzpasses? I didn't even have birth certificates. Everything has to be reproduced. No, it's the bombing, the moving, No, nothing. I think when I got married in Berlin, I had this piece of paper that looked like a birth certificate. They said, it's not original. I said, I've been through, I don't know what in my life. I didn't move with papers when they took us out into the ghetto. My mother had nothing.
So, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just was wondering. You doing this to make Ralph Wallenberg a very famous person and name, and mainly
we're trying to get first-hand testimonies from people who were rescued, who had Schutzpasses, who knew of him. Last week we interviewed a gentleman who actually worked with him in a group that Raoul Wallenberg organized that was called Schutzprotokolli Brigaden. And he was actually one of the people who would go to the train stations, who would go to the Danube River.
That's a big one. I never heard about that. Never.
He's now 87 years old.
That's why.
He is actually a professor of the MIT, still active at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Dr. Janos Beer, and he actually has the documents that were issued by the Swedish embassy in Budapest, proving that he's a Swedish employee, like the employee of the embassy, yes. and he also has a document. He donated all the documents to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, but they sent me the copies of the documents.
Wow.
So he had also a special pass that allowed him to go into ghetto and to leave the
Like
ghetto.
Wallenberg.
Yes, from the Hungary, and it was signed by the Hungary Arrow Cross or
The Arrow Cross, the Nyilas we call.
Mhm.
But how come that he got away with it?
I don't know. I'm not sure how he managed to have that actually.
Because you see, it was so, especially now I'm reading this book, The Simpsons, which is a biography, and this woman really writes as things happen. It was such a strict looking at exactly who is Jewish, and I remember that they, just an example, the Arrow Cross took this, her name is Tuvel, they took her and said, admit that you're a spy, and she said, I'm not a spy. She said, we're going to kill you, you Jewish whore, you know. Admit that you're a spy. I don't know why they needed that she says that to kill her or not to. Anyhow, she resented it, they beat her and she survived. But I don't understand how some people got away with, even with the Shwartz, just to say that, you know. So maybe some people were not so brutal they encountered, or...
I know what the other people that we interviewed told us was actually that for some period of time, if you had a Schutz pass, it was fine. They wouldn't,
Until a time, we had that.
Until a period when they said it doesn't matter really.
Doesn't
can
matter.
have a Schutz
Jew
pass.
into the ghetto.
Exactly, into the ghetto, or the
Or
worst
killed.
case, Danube River.
Right.
So
That I don't know about the Danube River.
You
They
didn't-
killed people? No.
Yes, you didn't.
They
hear
killed
this story.
people at the Danube River?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. From all places, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just say a miracle that we survived, and I guess we are...
As you said, there are a lot of stories, and I'm sure we just captured a part of it today.
You can't, you can't do everything, because that would take a very long time, because once you talk, the details coming in, but really what it is, we don't even want to forget it, but people, we forget. You don't survive by thinking 24 hours. I know what happened. I'm pretty over over it, because I had so much different lives through my travelings and with marriages, and and my son, I'm knocking on wood. You're not Jewish, right? I know. He's such a talented, capable young man, and such a good-hearted, and so I'm very proud of that,
That's great.
I mean, he also didn't have everything smooth going, but I just told him, I said, if you have a lot of problems and a lot of bad times, and you survive it, and you're a survivor. Some people get killed and put down, and some people grow from it. It depends. It's whatever is, I'm not religious. I believe in a higher power or some type of a spiritual thing, but I absolutely don't go for 15 different gods. And so anyhow, that's besides that.
Thank you so much.